Okay, let's just go ahead and get started. So, hi everyone. Welcome to another Girls Who Start Zoom chat. We're so excited to have all of you. The Girls Who Start mission is to inspire middle school, high school, and college girls to become entrepreneurs and leaders. And we do this by showcasing female leaders and talking about their journeys. We have almost 40 chapters at middle schools, high schools, and colleges throughout the country and internationally. Before we begin, I'd just like to welcome our newest chapter presidents and their chapters. Amelia from Bow High School in New Hampshire, Amalia from Pace Academy in Georgia, Emma and Marin from Bethlehem Central, New York, Isabella from Milton Academy in Massachusetts, and Christina from Cooper Middle School in Virginia. If you're interested in starting a chapter or you know someone who may be interested in starting a chapter, please feel free to reach out through the Girls Who Start website or Instagram, which I will put in the chat momentarily. Today, we're so excited to present another Girls Who Start Zoom Fireside Chat, where we learn about the journeys of amazing female entrepreneurs and leaders. I want to introduce Brielle O'Hanna, the Vice President of Girls Who Start and a co-president of the Women Chapter. I'm so excited for our speaker today, and I'm going to pass it on to Brielle to introduce Sarah Kauss, founder of Swell.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. And Sarah, thank you for speaking at our Girls Who Start meeting. Sarah Kauss is the founder and chairwoman of Swell. She's a successful global entrepreneur, product design expert, and has deep experience in partnering with multinational corporations to become more sustainable and meet environmental goals. Sarah created a new category and well-loved brand, helping to make sustainability more mainstream. Today, Swell is a certified B Corp with a wide range of products that has helped displace more than 4 billion single-use plastic bottles. Sarah has been recognized as a Fortune's 40 Under 40 honoree, EY Entrepreneurial Winning Woman, and awarded the Harvard Business School Club of New York's Entrepreneurship Award. Under Sarah's leadership, Swell was named the #1 fastest growing woman-led company by the Women's President's Organization, was honored with the Brand Design Award by Inc. magazine, and placement on the 500 list of fastest growing privately held companies. Sarah sits on the UNICEF USA New York Regional Board, is an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School, and a mentor in the Fortune State Department Global Mentoring Program. Additionally, she earned a Bachelor in Science in Accounting from the University of Colorado Boulder and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Again, welcome, Sarah. Ariel is going to ask Sarah some questions, and then we will open it up to the group for questions. And just a reminder to everyone, this meeting is recorded.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Sorry?
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So my first question for you, you were a pioneer in sustainability and saw the harm that plastics were doing to the environment before everyone else. So can you tell us how you had so much foresight and where did the idea for Swell come from?
Sure. I think I was an environmentalist from a very young age. I think before, sustainability was mainstream and so popular. I grew up in a family that recycled. And I think we were the first people on our street, on our block that recycled. And this was before curbside pickup. So my parents would have to put the recycling in the back of the car on the weekend, and we would have to take it down and sort it at our county recycling center. So I just grew up that way. It was always part of my DNA to think about, how to reduce, how much gets thrown away and how much, really can't be reused and has to be recycled. And one of the things that I realized, as I was, going to the University of Colorado at Boulder and graduating, living in Denver and then LA, moving to Boston and going to business school, I became more and more senior in my life, which sort of meant I was investing in my wardrobe. I was investing in my shoes and my handbag and maybe my automobile, and really trying to make sustainable choices. But I was very careful not to use single-use plastic bottles. And when I was becoming more senior in my career, it almost seemed a little inappropriate to be using a water bottle at work that looked like something that I would go camping or hiking or take to the gym. So I wish I could say that I had this great business plan and this big idea and I understood the market, but I was really creating a product for me. I went to the sporting goods store and I couldn't find a product that I was really proud to leave on the boardroom table next to me while I was working. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could create a product that looks better, a product that works harder, keeps things hot and cold and doesn't condensate on the inside of my fancy bag. And potentially there could be more customers like me out there. But really in the beginning, it wasn't this great big idea. It was something small, and it was really for a customer of one.
And before I ask the next question, just a reminder, if you're not speaking, please try to mute yourself. So Sarah, a lot of people have ideas, but never do anything with them. So what spurred you to really start and actually take action on your idea?
My parents were entrepreneurs when I grew up. And so I think I always thought I would have a company, I would start something. Although I think for many, many years, I was searching for my idea. The idea for Swell came to me while I was, hiking on a mountain with my mom in Arizona, on a hot summer's day, took a sip out of a metal water bottle that wasn't insulated. And I had this aha moment thinking, wouldn't it be great if something better existed? But I think the reason I really started, like the reason that I sort of took that idea into reality, is I had a fear that someone else was going to do it sometime in the future. And I would always have regrets and say, oh, that was my idea. That was the thing that I was going to do, but I never made the time for it. And so I think for me, it was really, that expression FOMO. It was really the fear of missing out on the opportunity to do it myself. It was the fear of not at least trying to give my project, it was really a project, not a company back then, my project, the time and space and effort to get it off the ground, because I thought I would always have regrets. I thought it was such a big, important idea that someone was going to do it, and why not have that someone be me?
Great. So can you talk to us a little bit about the very beginning of Swell? Because I think we're all very curious about the very first actions that entrepreneurs take to begin. So what did you do to start the company?
I did a couple of things. I spent a lot of time in stores. I spent a lot of time either, buying one of every water bottle on the market, or, quietly watching as customers were shopping for bottles. Thinking about, how do they shop for it? Do they take the lid off? Do they practice taking a drink? Are they checking the price point? Are they taking the packaging apart and reading the little book on the inside? Really trying to be a shopper myself, and then a secret shopper to think about, what is the product? And then as I started to have hypotheses, like, how do I think my product needs to look? How big is it? What's the pricing? Where's it going to sell? I started talking to my friends. I wish I could say it was a focus group, but my focus group were just sort of my knucklehead friends that I had sitting around, because I thought these are the people that will be my eventual consumers in the beginning. And, hopefully my consumers for life. So I would sit down with them and say, okay, I need you for an hour, and we're going to sit around this table, or, we're meeting for a meal anyway. Why don't we have a conversation? I would say, okay, would you pay this price for this product? And what color does it need to be? And how do you feel about it? And really it was getting that real-time feedback, that feedback loop of, if it looked like this, would it work like that? And what do people think about it? I would say the very, very beginning wasn't very sexy at all. It was just taking other products and drawing a picture of what I thought my product would look like, and then talking to people and letting them poke holes in it and challenge me on what it was going to do and how it was going to work for them, and really stand out in the marketplace to be something different.
So early on, you developed major partnerships with Starbucks and Nordstrom and J. Crew. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you worked on approaching them, and what was the key to success for you?
Sure. I mean, I always wanted to have those big partnerships. I always really wanted those big clients. But I think the key to success was actually starting small. Starting with the independent mom and pop, small independent gift stores that I could walk into and get to know the owner. The reason being is that, my background wasn't in consumer products. I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I still don't, but I at least have a little bit more experience now. But back then I really didn't know what I was doing. And so what I needed to do was make the mistakes on smaller accounts, before I got to those bigger accounts. And those smaller accounts really taught me a lot about what is a case pack? What's a barcode sticker? What does packaging need to look like? What's an assortment? When I first started Swell, we only had one product. It was one blue bottle in one size. And really, to be in the front window of Bloomingdale's, you need a lot of colors, you need a lot of patterns, you need things to be beautiful. And so I was lucky in that I had made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot in the very early days of the business by selling bottles 4 at a time, 10 at a time to small independent stores. And quite honestly, I was wooing Bloomingdale's for about 2 years. And every time I'd send them a sample, I would get a response that said, "Thank you very much, Sarah. We don't sell water bottles here." And I would write back and say, "Thank you very much. I'm not selling a water bottle. I'm selling a hydration fashion accessory. It's a gorgeous, beautiful product, and we belong on the shelf just like a handbag or a scarf." And luckily, they said no for 2 years while I got to continue to build out the product. So when they finally said yes, I actually had a much better product and a much better product line to sell them.
So I think we can all agree that you've been a genius at product development. So can you tell us about how you come up with new ideas and what are some of your favorite products that you've developed? And then also what have been some of your latest developments?
Well, thank you. Most people don't call me a genius, so I'll take it. I appreciate it. What are some of my favorite products? So, right now being COVID and a time of staying home, I have a young son who's 2.5, and we don't go out to restaurants. And so one of the great things that we've been doing is a lot of picnics. I mentioned I'm down in Florida, so the weather's nice enough to be outside. And I've been using a lot of our Swell Eats and our Snack by Swell lines, which keep foods hot and cold. And I have to say, even if I didn't own the company and hadn't designed the product, I probably would still be just as in love with those products because it has brought a new enjoyment, I would say, to dining out, where everything is made in my own kitchen and we either sit in the backyard or take it on a walk somewhere in a park. So that's been a lot of fun to kind of use my products in a different way now that we're all stuck at home. And then your second question was, what am I working on now? Yeah. So really interestingly, right before COVID, I fired myself from my job. So I was the founder and CEO of Swell for 10 years. And I hit a point where I thought the value of myself would be more valuable on the outside of the business, looking out, thinking about big partnerships and things we could be doing, new products, new paths, new developments, than inside the business looking in. Running payroll, looking at spreadsheets, answering emails. And so just about a year ago, I hired someone to replace me. And for about the last year, I've been working on some really big partnerships. So I started a new company within Swell called Groundswell, and I'm calling it Sustainability as a Service. And because we've been talking about sustainability pretty authentically for about 10 years now, some of the biggest companies in the world have come calling and really said, "Listen, you are a pioneer in the space. You were talking about this before anyone did. We want you to do for our product category what you did for Swell. We want you to really help us think about new products, and in some cases, actually entirely new systems of how to consume in the future, because younger consumers, much like yourself and those on the call, are really demanding better solutions from a lot of these really big companies, really demanding, less plastic, less packaging, products that bring them joy and happiness and are fresh and fun. And so I've actually been working with, some of the biggest consumer packaged goods companies, some of the biggest beverage companies, snack food brands, really thinking about how to be more sustainable. It's actually been a lot of fun.
Great. So as you said, you've run your company for over 10 years now. So what have been some of your favorite moments of the journey and maybe some of your least favorite that you've had?
Oh goodness, there's so many. Probably the favorite moment that changed my life forever, when I was standing in my apartment and I got a call from Oprah's magazine saying that they wanted to run my product as one of their favorite things. It was it was one of these amazing moments. I remember what I was wearing. I remember I was halfway done having a bowl of soup for lunch. My cell phone rang and my life changed forever. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. I would say that was probably the day that we switched from being a project to a company, needing to think about hiring some employees to keep up with customer service. At that point, I had all the inventory in my living room, knowing that I needed to order some more living room, or either buy a bigger living room or, order more inventory. I actually wound up getting a warehouse, which was a really good idea. So I would say that that was a really crystallizing moment. And I learned a lot from that because I didn't have a public relations firm. I didn't really have anyone that was helping me with those things. But I would go to the bookstore and stand in the front of Barnes and Noble and literally write down the mailing address of every editor of every magazine I wanted my product to be sold in. And I just wrote a personal note and said, "Hi, I'm Sarah. This is my product. Here's why it will change your life," and put a sample in the mail. And I literally walked to the post office, addressed a box to Oprah at her magazine in Chicago, and the universe did its magic, and it happened. So I would say that was probably the highest, best moment. And the probably the funniest but saddest moment happened in that living room as well. Was the first Christmas after I started the business. And my mom and dad thought they would come and help me and get my holiday orders out. And I don't know if my parents are anything like any of your parents on the call, but sometimes their helpfulness isn't always so helpful. God bless them. But they decided to introduce a lot of complexity in my life. So my dad is an engineer, and he explained to me that the way I was packaging and sending out the products was really time consuming and we could be doing it better. So what he said is, taking off the top, putting in a slip that had the cleaning instructions, putting the top back on, wrapping it up and putting it in a box took too much time. So we should create an assembly line. So let's take all the bottles and line them up. Let's take off all the tops, 30 bottles lined up, drop in all the tops. So we created an assembly line on my kitchen table. We got out all the holiday orders. We shipped about 1,800 bottles that afternoon with my parents. And then I realized that I couldn't find my water bottle, the one that I had been using for 2 years, that had a dent on the bottom and actually had my name with magic marker with Sharpie pen on the bottom. My father had put it in a box in his haste, in his assembly line. He'd literally shipped my bottle half full of water with my name on it to a customer. And to this day, we still laugh about it at family dinners because I had to pick up the phone, call all of my customers, and I said, "I have an intern at my company that went rogue and accidentally sent out my bottle. Can you please send it back to me? I'll send you 2 free ones to make up for your effort." So I was able to find it and get it back, but I seriously could have killed him because it wasn't helpful whatsoever.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great story. So there are many statistics that show that it's harder for female founders to raise capital to help grow their companies. So can you talk to us about your experiences and give us any tips on raising money to build a company?
Sure. So I actually am a terrible person to give tips on this because I actually never raised. So I bootstrapped the business and I still own 100% of the business. So I actually didn't bring on private equity or venture capital or even friends and family money. I grew up as an accountant. My job when I was first out of school was being an accountant. So I was really careful on where I was spending money and thinking about, the margins and the unit economics for the product. And so I'm not great at giving advice there, but I would turn your question into just having advice for women as entrepreneurs. I would absolutely agree the statistics are dire and, not really very good when you look at, women starting, women funding and all of that. But I would say that there are a lot of really great entrepreneurship programs for women. I mean, there are clubs like this one, which and that very well because you started it. But I would say be parts of groups like this, be parts of formal and informal networks everywhere you can, and really create a support system for people that are running different businesses, outside of your own. From the very beginning, I was really lucky that I had other people that were helping pull me up and pull me along with, "Hey, this is what I've learned. This is a good partner. This is a good store. Here's what I've learned about packaging." And still to this day, I have a bunch of younger entrepreneurs that I mentor, formally or informally to really help them not make the mistakes that I did and actually, have more successful businesses faster. And so I would say that there really are some amazing opportunities for women in business, and you just have to avail yourself of as many of those as possible to overcome, some of the statistics that are really hard.
Great. So obviously Swell is a leader in social responsibility. Can you talk to us about some of your favorite programs, such as the Million Bottle Project?
Sure. So, the Million Bottle Project was born really to try to quantify the good that we've had in the world. And it's really hard to know how many times everybody uses your product and the impact that you're having. So we commissioned a study and we figured out very conservatively how our product's being used. Even if you just use the bottle, once a day for a year, we found that on average, a person uses our product 167 times. So every 6,000 people that buy a bottle, we've saved 1 million single-use plastic bottles. And so we've been able to figure out that over the last 10 years, we've saved more than 4 billion single-use plastic bottles. And that's not including, cutlery, straws, food containers, barware, all the other stuff that we make. And what I really love about that program is that it really shows that like very small everyday steps can add up to having a bigger impact. And I think with sustainability, especially, it's really hard to be perfect. It's almost impossible not to use any single-use plastic. And what we really try to encourage our customers is to be light green and not dark green, like to be accidental activists by doing good, by having these small impacts. And what we've been able to show our customers is that by doing these small things over time, collectively, they have a much bigger impact. And you don't actually have to be so hard on yourself to be perfect that, you're living off the grid or you're living a sustainable life. There's probably something in between, and that really good behaviors beget other good behaviors. And so that's one of the things that like makes me so proud. And the Swell team comes up with these ideas all the time. Like we just did this for the Front Lines program where, at the beginning of COVID, there's so little that we could do to help. We wound up donating $1 million worth of product to frontline hospital workers. And we have received so many incredibly nice and sweet notes, from doctors and nurses and healthcare advocates that are working like really long hours, just saying thank you, just saying like, thank you for not forgetting about us out here. And so, the team is always trying to put their heads together to think about like, how do we show up? How do we donate a bottle for every high school student in the city of New York City, all 5 boroughs, and do a year of programming and teach those kids to be brand ambassadors. And even though those are, they're expensive because they're product donations, they're actually really valuable for the brand because our employees care so much about the impact we're having. But I think the goodwill that we're having in the community really comes back to help us with, brand awareness and sort of just overall, goodwill for what we're doing.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. And my next question is, how has the coronavirus affected your company?
It's actually been really difficult. I would say the first thing that really affected us is that we were very much in the office culture every day, 5 days a week, morning till evening. We never were remote. And so the first was really just figuring out new ways to work, having calls over Zoom and figuring out how to use Slack. And funny enough, we got to be really productive really quickly. And I don't think we're ever going to be 5 days a week in the office ever again. I think everybody really likes the flexibility. I mean, we miss each other. We miss our Friday happy hours and our catered lunches and all of that. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think we also really like, being able to see our families and not having commutes and things like that. So I think we'll come back, but part-time. It has definitely, COVID has really affected our sales channels. So a couple of our sales channels were pretty impacted because we sell in retail stores. So, the majority of our retail partners were closed. And one of our very big channels is in selling custom products to events. So high schools, colleges, the Google campus, which is closed, a lot of really big closed loop environments that were looking to go sustainable, conferences giving away swag, you name it, they were all canceled. And so there was a big part of our business that really shut down. But the interesting thing that happened was the team really sprung into action and thought about how do we meet our customers where they are. For our retailers that closed, the big question was, how do we get set up on their .coms? How do we make sure that we have our entire product assortment available on Nordstrom's.com or, Bloomingdale's.com? So we set up something called drop ship, where every item in our warehouse that's available to us is available to our e-commerce channels. And we wanted to embrace this, and we've been talking about omni-channel for a long time. It was never a priority because we were so busy. And so there was something nice about COVID in that we had all the time in the world to really focus on becoming more digital first for our customers. And then for our events business, we started doing something called drop ship or direct ship, where we could actually ship to people's homes. And so we had a lot of clients, schools, big corporate events that either wanted to send, a bottle or, a glass for a happy hour or something with our company logo on one side and someone's name on the other. Again, it was something we talked about for a long time. The expression, "don't ever let a good crisis go to waste," has been said many, many times within Swell, because we're coming through the pandemic really nimble with new ways to work and new ways to work for our customers that really have benefited them. And then I would say the last thing we did is we just had to change all of our messaging. All of our ad campaigns, all of our messaging was all about keeping you hydrated on the go, keeping you hydrated at school or when you're in that yoga class. And, all of our ad campaigns were, someone standing on the subway and someone with a backpack. And we really had to quickly change our assets. We asked our team members all working from home to become models for the company. Take a picture with your dog, your cat, your sister, whoever you're stuck in your house with. And we created an anniversary campaign, really just trying to focus on our customers, keeping them healthy and well at home, because routines were totally different. And I don't think that was something we ever would have thought of doing before, but I think it was so successful. It was really authentic. I think we'll be doing it again in the future, even after we can, have photo shoots again.
That's great, and definitely an amazing way to pivot during the pandemic. So looking forward, what are your hopes and dreams for Swell in the future?
I would say one of the big things is really making sure the culture stays what it is today. I mean, one of the things I was really nervous about when we started working from home is that we were super productive, but we weren't having as much fun. Like we used to be an office with a really great culture where we were laughing a lot. And I think that there was something a bit magical about just sort of having the time to brainstorm and dream and not just be so tactical and meeting oriented. And so we've really tried to institute some things working from home that keep the fun, keep the laughter, keep the sporadic connections where you're meeting each other randomly in the break room, over a Zoom. But I think one of the things I'm really going to focus on is when we all can meet again is getting back to sort of that cadence, getting back to that laughter. Because I think that's one of the things that makes us really different than a lot of other consumer product companies. And then I think on my personal side, I'm really excited about working with some of these big companies. In the early days of Swell, if one of these large plastic polluting companies came to me to partner, I don't think I would have said yes. I think I would have shaken my tiny fists and said, "Oh, you're terrible." But I think my thinking has really evolved of how can I have the biggest impact? How can I use my company, my name, my brand, to work with some of the companies that really need the help, the nimbleness of a smaller organization to help them think about the future. And so what I'm really excited about is, something about this pandemic has made people realize how interconnected we all, and at the same time has made these companies start to expedite a lot of their sustainability plans. And so I think Swell is really well set up and suited for coming out with some pretty fun new models that I think are going to keep me pretty excited for the next 5 or 10 years.
We're all thinking about how to find mentors and how to work with mentors and how they kind of help facilitate your career. So who have been some of your mentors and how have they helped you throughout your career?
I would say mentors have been so helpful to me, and oftentimes they haven't been formal mentors. Just reaching out and asking people for advice. My one of my first mentors was a professor when I was in college. Really just reached out and said, I'm thinking about business school. I'm not sure of my future. Can you help me think about, should I take the GMAT now? Should I take it later? Really kept me thinking about not just where I was, but where I was going to be, 5 years out. Fast forward to my first career. My mentor was actually the woman that ran the entire office. She was the managing director of the whole office, but I was inspired by her. And I remember my first day of work, just going to her and introducing myself and saying, "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the newest, most junior person sitting in the cubicle over there, but I really want to learn from you." And even though she wasn't a formal mentor, because she was very busy, she gave me some incredible advice about, making sure I didn't get lost within the organization. And that even though I was a junior person, that I felt that I was, working on the clients and the projects that I really wanted to. So I've been, fortunate, now that I'm an entrepreneur, I have a lot of mentors and, people that I look up to and have learned a lot from, because they have been on this entrepreneurial journey. To your question about how do you find mentors, I think you just ask. I think people love to give advice. And I think if you say, "I'll buy you a cup of coffee, let's go have a sandwich, let's have a quick Zoom call," if it's, during a pandemic, you might not get a yes every time. But I think by putting yourself out there and, not crafting the same message that, 15 people, but really being authentic. And this is why I've selected you. This is what you've done. And this is what I admire. This is who I am. And this is what I'm trying to do. And here's what I think you could help me with. I think you'd be really surprised how often the answer would be yes. I'd love to give you some advice, because people really like to talk, right? People really like to feel that they're good at what they do, or they've learned something along the way. And I think people generally want to help out the next generation to make sure, that they're well equipped for whatever they're trying to do. So even if it's not through a formal mentorship program, I would encourage you over any step in your life or in your career to try to reach out to those people that are a couple steps ahead of you that can help you see around the corner.
I have one last question for you. So many of us are in high school, middle school, or college right now. What skills would you advise us to develop?
I'm completely biased, but I would say math and science for sure, only because that's my background, that's my foundation. And as much as I'm very happy I don't have to do accounting anymore and I can hire a CPA for my business, and I'm also really thrilled that I could self-fund and finance my business, because I was not intimidated by the numbers, because I knew how to pick up the financial statements and read them. And so, for me, in my very biased background, I would say make sure that you've got, that foundation of math and science. And I would say also try to pick something foolish. Pick something that you enjoy. Is it literature? Is it some type of performing arts? I find that young people I talk to today, they're doing so much because they have to, not because they want to. I would say that there's some percentage of your time that should be spent on something that you truly enjoy, something that doesn't make it to the college essay and doesn't make it to the the resume. Because I really do think that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to come up with the ideas of the future, the ideas don't always come to you in a linear fashion. Sometimes they come to you through a hike with your mom in the desert. Sometimes they come to you through a passion. So I would say eat the vegetables and do the hard stuff, but make sure that there's a little bit of time for the fun stuff too.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm now going to open it up for a Q&A. So just type your name in the chat and I'll call on you to ask your question. That way you're able to interact with Sarah. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking, feel free to just type your question in the chat and I can read it out loud. And in the interest of time, we may not get to everyone's questions, but we'll try our best. Margaret, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Sarah. I just have a couple of questions I would like to ask you. So, on your business path, what have been some challenges that you've experienced and how have you overcome them? Also, what would you think would be good abilities, skills, knowledge, or any course content to have to be successful on this business path? And if you could go back 10 years to when you started Swell, what knowledge or advice would you give to yourself?
Sure. Thank you. Those are great questions. I would say there's been a lot of challenges on the path for sure. I mean, maybe one of the bigger ones that encompasses a lot was in scaling. My business grew very fast, very quickly. So I didn't necessarily have the time to learn linearly. I didn't necessarily have the team or the internal systems or the processes to keep up with the growth. And so I think for me, one of the challenges was pacing myself, pacing the business, saying no sometimes to opportunities that, would have put, dollars in the bank, but we weren't ready for. And then I think also just having a bit of a system, a bit of a feedback loop to really learn from the failures, learn from the lessons, making sure that anytime there was something that was bumpy, we didn't just push through it, but we tried to document what happened, make it part of the tacit knowledge of the organization that gets passed on to make sure that that was a one and done and that we could learn from it and move forward. I think the skill set question, we talked a little bit about, but, I would say whatever the business that you're trying to find, I think having, a skill set in that, I think that accounting and finance and math and science and just sort of critical thinking is probably really valuable, to any business. And then there's probably some specific knowledge involved in, the startup that you're looking for. It's not sexy, but I would say sales is one of those things that you have to do, whether you're selling a product or a service. And, where do you get good at sales at such a young age? I don't know if it's from a internship, a summer job. It's sort of finding confidence in yourself to talk to strangers, and take yourself out of your comfort zone. I don't know, is that signing up for improv comedy class or theater or working at the local Starbucks? I'm not sure. But I do think that there's some things that you can do at a younger age that really give you, the critical mass of skills that you might use, in your startup, even if you don't know what your business is going to be in the future, just sort of thinking, what are those core functions that a lot of businesses have?
Violet, go ahead.
What inspired you to call your company Swell? And what does it stand for? And my second question was, what does a day of your life look like?
Sure. Violet, I love that question. So one of my challenges is, as I was saying, because I studied accounting and finance, is I did not have a marketing or creative background. So I'd like to tell you that I named my company Swell because I was a great marketer, but I hired a great marketer. So I actually called my company Can't Live Without It, and I bought the URL can'tlivewithoutit.com. And the reason I did that is I thought, I'm selling a water bottle, an empty water bottle, and you can't live without water. And ever since the first bottle I've sold, I've worked with water charities, bringing clean water to girls in Africa and Madagascar. And I really thought that was a catchy name. And I hired a marketing firm to help me design the first website. And when they asked me the name of the company and I told them, they just started laughing. And they said, what are you going to call this? The can't live without it.com water bottle? It doesn't roll off of your tongue like the name Swell. So I hired a company to help me with brand name. And what I really liked about Swell is it's such a positive word. It's very happy. At the same time, it's incredibly old fashioned. And, the notion of, drinking tap water and, not using the plastic bottle is a bit happy, but old fashioned. I also really love the word well was within it, and thinking that we were building wells and bringing water to people in need. It sort of had a double meaning. So as soon as I saw the name, I loved it, but I didn't actually know that I needed it until someone had really laughed at the first idea that I came up with. And then I'm sorry, you had a second question, Violet.
What does a day in your life look like?
Oh, a day in my life. Honestly, every day looks different. I'm challenged by the notion of work-life balance. I would say it's more for me work-life coexistence. I really do think you can do it all, especially, being a woman, you can do it all, but oftentimes maybe not all at the same time. So I'm really busy at work, but I'm also really busy at home. As I talk to you guys right now, I have, dinner set up in the crock pot in the kitchen because I did it while I was on a conference call earlier today, because I have a 2.5-year-old. And because it's COVID and I'm not traveling, we get to have dinner together every night, which is really incredible that I get to do everything I want during the day and I get to have a family in the evening. But at the same time, some days are, more on the family side and some days are more on the business side. Some days are more on really fun meetings that I love. And sometimes it's having difficult conversations, about product that's running late or something. So, I would say it's the frequency, the highs and the lows are pretty high. But the rate at which that frequency passes is actually really fast. So I'm really lucky that, the highs and lows come pretty quickly next to each other. So it's a bit of a roller coaster all of the time, but no 2 days are the same, but they're really quite fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eva.
Hi. So my question sort of begins with like a little bit of a story, which is that I remember when Swell came to like our school, like people started getting them and it was just the coolest thing ever. People obviously still have all their Swell bottles and use them just as much, but I remember like seeing the first one, thinking it was so amazing and like immediately looking it up on the website. And I love online shopping, so I would revisit the website constantly, and you always did such an amazing job of having what was trendy at the time, like with your patterns on the website. And I was wondering, how did you manage to keep up with all the trends in your products?
I mean, that's a great question, Eva. I think part of it is that I allowed the ideas to come from everywhere within the organization. So back before COVID, when we were still in the office, we had our trend boards up in the middle of the office. And so every single person, whether you worked in accounting or finance or customer service or on the creative team, would walk by those trend boards every day and stop and give us ideas. And the fact that the office is, in downtown Manhattan, everybody would take the subway to work or go to the museums on the weekend or, going to fun restaurants or see, graffiti. I love what's on your wall behind you. Like people would have the ideas, right? And so people would stop by and say, what I was just thinking? I just saw this amazing exhibit. Have you checked this out? And so instead of saying creativity lives here in this box, we had it very open to say, New York's outside our front door. We have an office in London as well, and where do we think those ideas can come? And our product is really a blank canvas. And so almost anything could be put on the outside. And so I think part of why we were so, I guess, lucky but smart was just sort of thinking that everybody could really help be product designers. And then I also think there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy is that, if you give somebody on the team something that they love because they helped design it, it's going to be successful because they put their time and energy behind making it successful. We have, somebody that works on our planning team, which is on the inventory side, and she got so excited about one of our collections. We actually named the collection after her. Now, she wasn't a designer. She didn't know anything about design, but she was really excited about this really happy floral patterned, collection that was coming. And then she would get into work every day and run the reports and see how they were selling because it was her collection. It wasn't her collection. She had nothing to do with it, but she loved it. And so there's something infectious about, seeing yourself in the product that really sort of helps take it full circle.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Elizabeth's question is, what advice do you have for someone like me who has already started a business? What do you have to say about building a larger audience and making my products enticing? And how do I grow my business?
Sure. Elizabeth, I had a professor at one point that gave me this advice, that gave us all of this advice about trying to hijack someone else's parade. So when you're a small business or you're just getting started or you don't have a big marketing budget, you really have to think about, what are those big global trends? What are those macro trends that are happening? What are those bigger businesses? Who are those influencers that have, more of an audience? And how do you partner with them? How do you co-opt what they're doing? How do you use their words and their language to get people that are all marching this way to start marching in your direction? How do you get their parade to come towards you? And so I would say, regardless of the type of business, the product or service you've started, think about how does that fit with what is going on right now? What are people talking about? What are they shopping for? and how do you start to co-opt some of that to come in your direction? And you don't always have to do it by yourself. You could do it through partnerships. You could do it through buying keywords. You could do it by showing other products in the background or the foreground of what you're doing. There's ways to help position what you're doing in sort of the general zeitgeist of what other people are already excited about.
Olivia, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Sarah. I appreciate your story about the ideation process, kind of bringing your friends to the dinner table and brainstorming the product appearances. And so my question is, what did the prototype process look like in terms of partnering with manufacturers and creating the physical product?
Sure. I would say the prototyping process in the early days were really messy. Now we have a full engineering team and 3D printers, and we sort of know how to design products. In the early days, I actually designed my first product in PowerPoint. So you can imagine that the first samples that I received were not very good. And so they're a bit horrifying. But it was a bit of pantomiming. It was a bit of knowing that I wanted it to be, taller, smaller, wider, thinner. There were a lot of late night conversations and, early morning chats to think about like how to get from, something not so good to something that was a bit more sleek, in the early days. But I almost think we needed to go through that process because I didn't have a product design background. I mean, now I've got a whole team that does all that great stuff, but because I didn't have a background, it was really gut feeling. It was really what I was designing for myself, and I wanted a beautiful bottle that would be sold in the MoMA gift store, the Museum of Modern Art gift store in New York. And so I thought it has to be gorgeous. And how do you draw something that's gorgeous? Like, I don't know. And so for me, I knew it when I'd see it. And so the prototyping process really had to be messy because I didn't know how to give that direction until I could physically, tangibly touch it. But now I would say, the world has come a lot further faster that, even if you don't have your own 3D printing machines, you certainly can partner. I mean, there's places where you can go, with your design and your ideas, and, they'll do those kinds of services for you. So I would say even now without a big team, I think I could have done things more efficiently than sending things halfway around the world and waiting for a sample to come and, saying a silent prayer and opening the box and hoping that it looks okay. I do think that there's ways to do that in a more robust fashion than it was when I started the company.
Goldie, you can go ahead.
Hi, Sarah. It's been very fun to hear your story. One of my questions was, how did you initially build your team when you first started? Like, what qualities did you look for in the people? Did you let your friends in on it?
That's a good question. No, I didn't let any of my friends in on it, only because I still wanted them to be my friends. So I thought, oh, okay, well, let's see how this goes. Although I did hire a bunch of my friends as models, and I gave them free product because I picked all my cute friends and I made them, have a fake picnic in the park so I could take their picture for the website. But my first employee was, I met her over the telephone, not even a Zoom call, while she was still a university student. And I hired her just to come in and do a little bit of everything. And she was with me for years. I mean, officially, she was the director of marketing, but she did everything with me. It really was thinking about scale and growth. I mean, from there, after that hire, it was all functional. It was all, I need a salesperson, I need somebody in operations, I need a designer. But the first hire was really just trying to think about, how do I extend like my day, that someone can do the easier things and I can do, the harder things and wrestle those to the ground. I would say the hardest thing about the business, not only from, the first year of business all the way to today, is people. As a business scales, I would say, software scales and manufacturing scales and systems can scale. But I think that the people piece is really difficult, finding the right people at the right time, making sure that, you're investing in them and that they're growing. I found that oftentimes we outgrew people as we grew. And, some people were thrilled to to be in a growing business and, a seat on a rocket, and they didn't really care where we were going as long as they were always learning. And some people really cared about, having a direct reporting relationship to me and not having a new boss come in, and, got caught up in nostalgia. I miss the days when we were only 5 people and now we're 100. And, so I think that there's just been challenges over time on the hiring side. One of the things that I always say to the team members, though, on their way out, is that I always hope that they take a piece of Swell with them when they go somewhere. And the interesting thing is that, now that we've had, hundreds, if not, thousands of employees over time, we have sort of, scattered our DNA across, the startup landscape in different places. And that has really come back to be incredibly helpful from a networking perspective, is that, even though somebody might not have been a fit for us forever, because they have gone off to somewhere else, and we've, kept in touch, they've become a partner, they've become a client, I've sent them business, we share ideas back and forth. So I would say, even though the people side has been really the hardest, I think it's probably, for me personally, the most rewarding, and the reason that I want to stay super close to culture, even though I'm not, day to day running the business anymore. Thanks.
Anisha.
Hi, Sarah. I just had a question. I had 2, which is first, what advice, what's the best advice you would have for someone who wants to plan a career that they can excel in, rather than just simply working to keep a job? And second, I know that a lot of great entrepreneurs have read some really good books. So do you have any book suggestions for us?
Oh, sure. Excel in versus just have a job. I mean, I would say it's not about finding necessarily something you're passionate about. It's just finding something that you're good at. Find something that you really enjoy. And I would say that there's so much that you can enjoy out of any career. Just sort of looking for, even if it's the first thing that you're doing, how do you squeeze the most out of it? How do you make sure that you take the opportunity that you have and make lemonade out of it, and really think about, okay, I'm the new person, or I'm the junior person, or how do I make sure I'm setting myself up, not just for, doing what's in my job description, but doing the parts of it that I'm going to really enjoy doing, or it's going to set me up for the thing that I'm going to enjoy doing next. So I would say my advice is to sort of, get yourself into a position that you're learning. There's a lot of jobs that have these rotational management, leadership programs. You get to try a lot of different things. But even in companies that don't have that, I would say talk to your informal mentors or bosses when you get there, and just sort of explain who you are and what you're interested in, and try to find, committees or ways to work in other departments, because I think that's a great way to kind of learn to make sure you're finding that thing you're going to excel in. Gosh, and then on the business books, I'm going to see if I have a pile of them on my desk at all times. I was just talking about culture a minute ago. I really love this woman named Patty McCord. She was the head of people and culture at Netflix. She wrote a book called Powerful. But I would say that's sort of more like when you're in a business and you're leading a team. But I'm trying to think. I really love Charles Duhigg. He has a book about the power of habit, and about, how small everyday habits can be formed and create a really big impact for your life. And then I would say Peter Sims wrote a book called Tiny Bets. And I think that's kind of a neat one about thinking about starting a business, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's all about sort of putting one foot in front of another and doing some reckless testing, and really taking some small bets. So I would say that's probably a good one as well.
Okay, so we have time for, 3 more questions. So Catherine, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, so I was wondering if there was a certain method that really helped you to grow your business the most efficiently.
I would say really thinking about process. I mean, I hate to say that, because I think at the beginning of every growth spurt, there's been sort of this really messy brainstorming. how about this? And here's a product, here's an idea, and I would say that's a really important step, that all ideas are good ideas and let's think about them. But I think what's really helped is having process, a process around evaluation of the idea, a process around, making the go or no go decision. Are we going to make this product or not? Be really rigorous of looking at, the market, the competition, the size of the prize, the places we would sell. And then even after you do all that work, being willing to put things on ice or say no for now, I think has been really helpful as we scale, because we haven't been able to say yes to everything at the same time. So I think that if I had to distill it down to one thing, it's really being open to ideas in the messy creative process, but then also being very clinical about putting it on, a stage gate process or some kind of process for evaluation to make sure we're not spending all of our time and money on something that was a bit of a wild hair.
Yashoda's question is, who are your biggest competitors and how do you make your brand stand out more than theirs?
I would say we've got a lot of competitors, and we had a lot of competitors even before, I started Swell. But I would say after I started Swell, we even have more competitors. I like to think that we created this, high-end hydration as a fashion accessory. I would say probably, Yeti. They're a little bit more masculine and tough, a little bit more the hunting, fishing, outdoor crowd. I would say Hydro Flask. They think they were very well known for the Visco girl trend last year, and putting stickers and stuff on your bottle. They're both great products, but I think we stand out because we're a B Corp. We're a mission-driven company. We're women-owned. And we really like to think about how we make you feel, not just how the product performs. So we do a lot of work around, the functionality of the product, but for us, a lot of it is color and pattern. A lot of it's, where did you find the product? How is it marketed to you? And, how are you using it in your life? And I really do think that, one of the reasons we've been more successful is because we spend the time really thinking about the customer and, how they're going to use it and how they can be more joyful in the way that they consume our products.
Great. So our last question, Elisa, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Do you have any other plans or ideas regarding environmental sustainability in addition to the ones that Ariel mentioned before? And if so, what are your other goals?
Right now I'm sticking with working with some of these really big companies and thinking about where we can have impact. I have all kinds of ideas of, products and categories and things that need disruption. But right now I'm really focused on this groundswell effort and thinking about how do I use this platform to do something even bigger than we're doing at Swell. And oftentimes it has nothing to do with actually creating a product. It's really creating a new system and sort of a new way of consuming. But my North Star is sustainability. It's all about health and wellness of the people and the planet.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking Sarah for sharing her inspiring journey with us today. And thanks everyone for joining for another Girls Who Start Zoom conference. Feel free to follow us on Instagram and check out our website for more information about additional Zoom fireside chats this winter and other upcoming events. Also, make sure to follow Swell Bottle on Instagram. And Sarah, I don't know if you want to share your account.
Sure. I'm Sarah Kauss, but I will probably have a picture of my crock pot on there. So boring. But feel free to find me. I'd love it. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Brielle. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. And just a reminder, our next Zoom fireside chat will be with Kara Golden, the founder of Hint Water, on April 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And go to our website to sign up. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Have a great night.